guys, it's Morgan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my first ever book video. Today I'm going to give you guys a little rundown of all the books that I read this fall, and then I'm also going to give you guys my TBR list for this winter. So let's start with the books that I actually have copies of, and then we'll go on to the books that I have on my iPad. First up, we have The Evening Hour by Carter Sickles. This book I rated a 3 out of 5. It is about a guy named Cole that grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and a coal company comes in and they start blowing up the mountains because they were trying to get coal by removing the mountaintops. So this company came in and tried to buy out all the land by the coal site, and Cole's family, the main character, owns land by the coal site, and so they're trying to decide if they should sell their land and move out or not. And I don't want to give too much away, but there is a big, shocking moment in this book. Literally, I was reading and my jaw dropped. So overall, I really liked the plot line, but my problem with the book was that Cole was a drug dealer and he works in this old, I think it's a kind of like a hospice, and he steals from the old residents all the time. So he is just not a main character that I can really root for. So I think I would have liked the book if maybe Cole had stopped doing those things early on in the book. I think I would have liked it more, but because he was kind of portrayed as a bad guy, I didn't really love that. Next we have A Dog's Purpose by W. Bruce Cameron. This was the only book I read this fall that I rated a full 5 out of 5. I loved this book so much. It's also a movie, but I haven't seen the movie. I just think this is such a good book for someone that has a dog or had a dog that they had a really deep connection with. For a majority of the book, I felt like I was really connected to this dog, and I could feel every emotion so deeply because I have a dog that I'm attached to. So that's why I think that if you have a dog or you know someone that has a dog, they will love this book. So it is written from a dog's perspective, and the dog dies and is reborn multiple times throughout the book, and in each of his lives he figures out his new purpose with his new owners. I love books that come full circle, and this book definitely did that. I absolutely loved how it ended, but there were some points in the book where I thought it was a little slow and I didn't really connect to those moments as well as I did the other moments. But as I kept reading, I kind of realized how everything connected. I finished this book a couple of weeks ago and literally have not been able to stop thinking about it since. The more I think about this book, the more I love this book, and every time I see my dog, I'm just like, do you think these things? Do you think the things that this dog said in this book? I just think if you have a connection with the dog, you are going to love this book, so definitely give it a try. Also, I forgot to mention that I read The Evening Hour for a literature and culture class, and then the next book I read for that same class, it is called Saving Grace by Lee Smith. This book I rated a 3.5 out of 5. It's about a girl whose dad is a preacher, but he is a seriously flawed preacher. He's not the best guy, but the book follows the main character whose name is Florida Grace, and she is the preacher's daughter, but she's not really what you would picture to be the preacher's daughter. She really struggles with accepting God, but that's part of what made it so interesting to me. But it basically follows her life from when she was a little kid all the way to when she's 30 or 40 years old. I really liked that this book, again, like A Dog's Purpose, came full circle and it ended in a similar way that it started, which I always like that. I don't know why, but it didn't really give me enough answers to all the questions that I had at the end. I like how it ended, but I just felt like I needed more information. I also feel like there were a lot of characters at times, which I found a little bit confusing because sometimes I would accidentally mix up the characters. There were also moments in the book where it was a little slow, which is why I kind of bumped my score down to 3.5 out of 5. But overall, I did like the book. So another book on my iPad that I read for school is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I rated this one a 4 out of 5. So it's about a girl in high school named Star, and she sees her best friend die due to police brutality, and you watch her struggle with flashbacks and having to talk to the police and how she deals with her friend's death while also speaking out and advocating for injustices against police brutality. Personally, I think this book is one that all underclassmen in high school should read, and honestly everyone in general should either read the book or look at the movie, but I feel like really it's targeted more to younger high school students just because of how it's written. The only thing that was hard for me while reading the book was to distinguish between Star's flashback moments and when she was in reality, because they were kind of quick changes, and when you're reading it's kind kind of hard to distinguish those. I actually think the movie did a really good job of showing everything because you really got to see like the emotions come out of the characters rather than just seeing them through a page. So honestly, I enjoyed the movie just as well as I enjoyed the book. Okay, this next book I rated so bad. It was probably the worst book that I read this fall, and honestly it's one of the reasons that I don't have that many books that I rated, because this book took me forever to read because I did not like it at all. So this is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I rated this a 1 out of 5, okay, because the synopsis makes it sound really good, and it wasn't. I did not think it was good at all. I'm pretty sure it has like 4 stars on Goodreads, so maybe I just missed the whole point of this book, but it was not for me at all. Basically, it is about 2 people that kind of go head to head in a competition, and they're supposed to have like some type of like magical-esque powers. They can like control things with their minds, I think. I'm not really sure. You don't fully get an explanation on anything, and I think that was kind of part of the problem that I had with the book, because you know that there's competition, but you don't know anything about it at all because the characters don't really even know anything about it either. I also had a hard time keeping track of all of the characters because there is so many of them, and I feel like you really don't get a lot of character development at all, which is what kind of helps me to distinguish the characters. It was also written in a way for me that was really hard to follow because they had a lot of different flashback type moments, like the chapters would be written in different years, but then you would also get different point of views in each chapters, so it would be a lot of switching back and forth between the years and between different point of views, and I felt like that was just a little bit too much, because then that's when I would start to get a little bit confused on what year I was reading and who was talking. I think I just overall found it really slow, and honestly that made it really boring. But a lot of people like this book. It just was not for me at all. When I read the synopsis, it sounded like there would be a lot of adventure in the book, and I didn't think there was any at all, honestly, and I think that's why I was turned away from it so much, because I was expecting all of this adventure and action, and I did not get any of that. Alright, the last book that I read before we get into my winter TBR list is Romancing Mr Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. This book I rated a 3.5 out of 5. So this is the 4th book in the Bridgerton series. They are set in the early 1800s in London, and I love reading about that time period. I think it's my favorite time period to read about. I just think it's so interesting, but this book focuses on the relationship between Colin Bridgerton and Penelope Featherington. So each book in the series focuses on one Bridgerton family member. So this one shows Colin and his relationships, which I thought the relationship in this book was more realistic than the relationships in the other books in the series. This book I probably would have rated higher if I didn't accidentally spoil it for myself so many times, because if I didn't already know what happened, there would have been some moments in this book where I would have been really surprised, but unfortunately I accidentally spoiled it for myself, so I already knew those like really shocking moments and I knew what was going to happen. So that was a little upsetting, but just a warning, if you buy a newer version of the books, each one has what they call a second epilogue, which just shows their relationships years after the book ends. And I had read a couple of them, like the first 3 from the previous books, and they give away a couple spoilers about the other books in the series, which I don't love. So from now on, I'm not going to read the second epilogue. I'm going to wait until I finish all of the books and then read the second epilogues. Also, it has taken me a really long time to get through the series because I feel like I need to take breaks in between each book because I find them to be all fairly similar. They're a little bit predictable because you can kind of just tell what's gonna happen. Like I said, this is the 4th book in the series. So far, I think my favorite book in the series is probably the 3rd book because it's kind of a spin-off on Cinderella, and I found it to be the least predictable out of all 4 of the books that I've read so far. Alright, now let's switch gears and start talking about my winter TBR list. This first book is Flush by Carl Hissen. I'm not exactly sure how to say his last name, but I did already start this book. I'm about halfway done with it. So it is basically about this dad that figures out that this casino boat is dumping its waste into the water instead of hooking it up to a tank and sending the tank away for treatment. Instead of doing that, he's just dumping it into the water. So as a protest, the main character's dad sinks the boat boat that's dumping its like toilet remains into the water, and he goes to jail for it. And I feel like it sounds like I just spoiled a lot of the book, but literally you find all of that out in like the first chapter. So everything happens relatively quickly, which I think makes it interesting. So far I'm liking it, but it's very like a middle school oriented book. It's written very easily, very easy to understand. So I think that's kind of how I ended up reading half of it in one night. So if you're in the younger audience, I think you would like this book. I also want to keep reading the Bridgerton series. I talked about this with the last book that I read, but I think I have 8 more books left in the series. I have a lot, so I need to keep working through those. So I'm not sure how many I'm going to read, but quickly I'll just read off the 8 books that I have left in the series. So the next one that I'll read is To Sir Philip with Love, and then I have When He Was Wicked, It's in His Kiss, On the Way to the Wedding, The Bridgertons Happily Ever After, The Further Observations of Lady Whistledown, Lady Whistledown Strikes Back, and The Wit and Wisdom of Bridgerton. So I have a lot left to read, but I love those books. I think they're so interesting. Again, I think I just love that time period, and that's why I like them. Okay, I also want to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This will probably be the book that I read after I finish Flesh, because I want to read it before Christmas. I wanted to read this one because I've seen the movie so many times, and that's one of my favorite Christmas movies, and I just never realized that it was a book too, so I want to read the book. I also really want to read Normal People by Sally Rooney. This one has been on my TBR list for a long time, and now it's like finally like really high up there because I just got a Hulu free trial, and they have the Normal People TV show on there, which is based on the book, and I want to read the book before I watch the TV show. Honestly, I don't really know much about this book because I'm trying to keep away from the spoilers because I know it's a really popular book. All I know is that it's kind of in the romance genre, which I love romance, so I'm sure I'm gonna like it. I'm also still working on the Rory Gilmore reading list, which has like hundreds of books on it, so definitely gonna work through some books on there as well. All the books that I finished this winter will be in my next winter wrap-up video, so I hope you will stay tuned for more book videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!